in dieser schrecklichen Geschichte, die es gibt, mit genau der Aufmerksamkeit und dem Einfühlungsvermögen, dass Sie zeigen, dieses Engagement einfach auch hier in Mannheim nach vorne gerückt wird und entsprechend auch gezeigt wird. Ich bedanke mich dafür recht herzlich. Ich hoffe, Sie konnten meinem Grußwort folgen, trotz der etwas schwierigen Rahmenbedingungen. Aber ich glaube, Sie können sehen, wie wichtig uns das als Stadt Mannheim ist, wie sehr wir das unterstützen und wie froh wir sind, dass Sie da sind.
Wir bedanken uns fürs Kommen und ab jetzt habe ich den Auftrag bekommen von meiner Kolleginnen, die diese Veranstaltung mitveranstalten, den Auftrag bekommen, uns durch den Abend zu führen. Das ist auch die Aufgabe, das Wort zu erteilen und das auch zu entziehen, falls jemand es missbraucht. Aber das wird selten der Fall sein heute Abend. Wir werden hintereinander ab jetzt 3 Beiträge hören von Vertreterinnen aus Namibia. Zunächst vom Vorsitzenden der Overherero Genocide Foundation, Nandi, der hier unter uns ist. Und dann wird der Beitrag von Paramount Chief kommen. Er ist online zugeschaltet. Und zum Schluss werden wir den Beitrag von Angelina hören und nach diesen 3 Beiträgen werden wir dann gemeinsam in die Diskussion einsteigen. Das heißt, wenn Sie zwischendurch Fragen haben, würden wir Sie bitten, sie aufzuschreiben oder beizubehalten, damit wir eine Gesamtdiskussion am Ende führen. Vielleicht als Einführung von meiner Seite: Vor einem Jahr ungefähr war ich an einer Online-Veranstaltung beteiligt, bei der es um Westafrika, um die Sahelregion ging, die Zuspitzung der Situation dort, vor allem im Blick auf Frankreich. Und dort war es vor allem unter anderem davon die Rede, dass Deutschland in dieser Region aufgrund der nicht direkten Beteiligung an der Kolonialgeschichte, das ist Frankreich, die Chance hätte, eine andere Rolle zu spielen, eine positive. Um das zu illustrieren, wurde zum Beispiel erwähnt, dass Deutschland das erste Land war in Europa, das die Unabhängigkeit von Mali anerkannt hat. Und für Mali hatte das viel zu bedeuten. Aber in dieser Diskussion ging es auch darum zu sagen, dass damit Deutschland so eine Rolle spielen kann, wäre es wichtig, so etwas wie Glaubwürdigkeit zu gewinnen. Und Glaubwürdigkeit beginnt im Umgang mit der eigenen direkten Kolonialgeschichte. Und die Beiträge, die wir heute hören, wollen uns genau dieses Bild zeigen, was einige der Organisationen, die hier sind, schon immer wieder thematisiert haben seit der Veröffentlichung der sogenannten Joint Declaration, des Versöhnungsabkommens zwischen Deutschland und Namibia. Und die Erkenntnis ist die, eine große Chance, eine Vorreiterrolle im Umgang mit Kolonialismus zu spielen, wurde vertan. Um auf diese Frage zu kommen, um auch auf die Frage, welche Handlungsspielräume überhaupt bestehen für zivilgesellschaftliche Organisationen, wollen wir zunächst diese Beiträge hören. Der erste, wie angekündigt, wird von Nandi gehalten. Und Nandi ist Vorsitzende der Stiftung, die im Auftrag hatte, aus der Perspektive der Overherero die Erinnerung an den Genozid lebendig zu halten, aber auch innerhalb von Namibia zu mobilisieren und außerhalb von Namibia, um Maßnahmen einzuleiten, die dazu beitragen können, dass sowas wie Gerechtigkeit
Good evening. And thank you for the opportunity, Program Director. I'm elated to be speaking to an issue that for me and my people is not really just history, but it remains present day reality because it continues to define us, our lives, our place in Namibia. It defines the share of us in Namibian demographic weight that is of a Herero we carry, because again, in a democratic dispensation, it is also what determines how close you are to the levers of state power and to your ability also to influence the distribution of public resources. So the genocide for us as of a Herero people is not history, it is reality, it is present day reality. I'm very thankful to our friends in the solidarity movement who have made it possible for us to be here, but also this very event to actually take place. Thank you, Bonnie, Simone, and the team really who have, and the team for the generosity and the warmth that you have extended to Angelina and I since we came to Manham. And it's truly a beautiful city that we are glad to be welcomed to by the Deputy Mayor. She just left. Of course, I'm told is a place with a rich history of working class people, but also a presence of working class people. It's a beautiful city. And I actually wanted to speak to the Deputy Mayor and tell her that indeed we will take her on the challenges that she just spoke to, the one of returning the looted artifacts and materials that were taken from our part. The pictures that I was told would actually be taken and be sent to us so that we can recognize what is ours. That's a good gesture, that's a good beginning. But I think our demand is for the doors of these museums to be opened so that we walk right through them. Verify our artifactual languages. Also, in terms of the renaming of the streets, it is again a good beginning for the city of Mainham, because I know that back home, the memorialization and remembrance program is almost virtually absent. There is nothing in Namibia that is erected by our own government as a serious fitting monument to the memories of genocide victims. It would be good if Germany can lead that, because after all, these are German crimes. So it is in German cities where you have an obligation and a duty to remember that history more than anywhere else. So, but just to briefly go back to the task or the brief I was given, of course, I would also first have to expand on where Boniface have ended, and perhaps because I know that not everybody knows who the Overhero Traditional Authority is, just to briefly expand on that introduction, that this indeed is the modern successor to the Overhero's own leadership governance or leadership structure, which is more than 150 years old. It is a body that represents Overhero. And in fact, because of the genocide of Herero today, are not just confined to one territory. They are a transnational people. They are in Namibia as the home front. That is where the traditional leadership is mostly resident. But we also have diasporan communities that are in Botswana, in South Africa. And now lately, because of the economic situation, we also have some communities in the global north, in the United States of America, in Canada, in the UK, but also to a less extent here in Germany. So Overhero people are everywhere, but all of them are actually led by the Overhero Traditional Authority. And at the apex of that structure sits the paramount chief, who will speak soon after me. And again, this is also a body that commands over 90% of the followership of Overhero people across these many territories that I've spoken to. Now, my brief again this evening, sorry. is to introduce the place and history of the Herero people in the modern era, and specifically their history around German colonialism, particularly 20th century, the 20th century first genocide, and our demands for atonement in the form of reparations as a settled question of international law, because these are not things that we are just making up. This is a settled question of international law, that if you commit a genocide and there is ample evidence as there is, you pay reparations. And so that has been our demand. And that is one of that is the question that I'll speak to. And it's not just a question of international law, but it's also a question of good practice in international relations. But I also know that many of us in this room do not also know much about this history, because in Europe and elsewhere, much of this history is actually ignored or is only mentioned in passing. So not very many people know about it. So I would want to briefly just take us through how Germany came into the picture, and how actually we are people so far away from Germany in terms of culture and distance, why we are so fixed on Germany, that it is Germany that must right wrongs that it committed in our space. And I want to say that, of course, we all know that Germany is a newcomer, and was the last entrant to imperialism compared to her cousins in Britain, in France, and many of these other countries that started early. But of course, when Chancellor Otto von Bismarck actually decided that it is time to get moving, and convened the 1884 conference, which is now known as the Scramble for Africa Conference, the conference that he convened in Berlin, then things started moving for Germany, because after that conference, Germany claimed many colonial holdings. And amongst those was the land that previously was known as the Herero, the land of the Hereros, and in the south, the land of the Namas, Great Namaqualand. And of course, in typical European racist attitudes, these were lands that combined the Germans came to know as Southwest Africa. Those were not the names. We had our own names. And of course, they named us, and later on, we also became German Southwest Africa. So, but out of that conference of Berlin, in addition to that land, Germany also claimed Cameroon, Togo, Tanzania, Gabon, Burundi and Rwanda, and also some other places, including Samoa, Papua New Guinea, and some other Pacific islands, including Nauru. But so within a decade of Germany coming last on the scene, they first moved on, or they first grew their colonial expedition to become the fourth largest colonial empire after those cousins. And in the new territory, or in the newly acquired Southwest Africa, the combination of the Herero largely and Great Namaqualand, they dispatched Imperial Commissioner in 1885, Heinrich Goering. And of course, we know who Heinrich Goering was. His son was actually Hermann Goering, the right-hand man of Hitler in Nazi Germany. So we know where he learned the racial hierarchies and all the things that he came to do with precision and intensity later on in the 1930s, as they commissioned and executed the crimes of the Third Reich. Young Goering was a good student of his father. And in that, this is actually one of the aspects of history that gives you the clear link, or the direct link, between the genocide of the Herero and Nama people, and also what came to take place later on in the 1930s. And it dispels the myth of the singularity argument that is employed when people talk about the crimes of the Third Reich, that this was just a once-off kind of event. It really speaks to the fact that this is something that started elsewhere. In fact, it is under the crimes of the genocide in Southwest Africa, in the Herero and Great Namaqualand, that most of the crimes that came to be, perpetuated during the 1930s, all of them were experimented there. The beheading of people, and all these experiments, the concentration camps, and many other things those were all started in our land. And of course, in the 1930s, it was scaled up and done at an industrial level. Of course, when Commissioner Henry Gering came to Namibia, or to a Herero in Great Namakwaland, he began to immediately pressure chiefs into what he used to call protection treaties. And these treaties actually did not offer any protection to our people. They were meant to keep them out of their land, basically. And partly also they were actually meant to pit our people against one another. The Hereros and the Namas who were living as neighbors, of course, they had their issues over the years, over land and many other things. And so the treaties were meant to actually intensify that, so that the Germans are then the so-called mediators and would then be paid off in land and cattle as a way to transfer African wealth to German ownership. Of course, at that time, Herero were led by a paramount chief. Herero historically had not had a central command leadership, but since 1863 roundabout, they had come together and instituted the paramount chief, which is now the system that we have had for more than 150 years old, and which, had it not been for colonialism, you would say this is the king of the Hereros, because it's not in Namibia where a paramount chief reigns, but wherever there are Hereros. But at that point, we were led by Maharero, and he died in 1890, and so he was succeeded by his son Samuel Maharero, who I must add was actually, he succeeded to that seat with the aid of Germans, because he was the favorite of the German occupiers, and so he was sort of imposed. Of course, now this treaty that Henry Gering was actually offering to our people, as I said, they were nothing but protection, and they really did work for the Germans, because there was a lot of land, there was a lot of transfer of land from Africans to the whites through these treaties, where Germans were said to have done certain things and they need to be rewarded in land and cattle and so forth. And that continued from the era of Henry Gering to Gert von Francois to later on Theodor Ludwig. And of course, this became too much for the Hereros and the Namas, who are livestock rearing. And of course, we realized that this continued trajectory of them losing their land would ultimately end up in a situation where they cannot continue their life as they know it, because to rear cattle and other livestock, you need land. And their land was being lost to German settlers and to construction and to many other things. And so they decided to resist. And the uprising actually came on the 12th of January in the central town of Okahanja. The Hereros had actually seen an opportunity because Theodor Ludwig, who was the colonial leader in the territory, had gone to the south to put out a rebellion. There was a rebellion amongst the Bottle Swarts people, and so because he was not in the central parts, they took that opportunity, and they of course, under strict instructions from their paramount chief that they should not, they should spare German children and women. And again, speaking to the civility of the Hereros at that point, because the Germans did not reciprocate. It was their time to do that. They did not, and they killed women, children, and everybody else. So in 1904, in January, the hostilities broke out, and there were two decisive battles. One fought in a village close to Okahanja, where I'm actually from, Okanjira and Noviwambo, and the Hereros recorded successes there. And those successes actually led to the withdrawal of Ludwig as a leader of the German forces, because he was he was said to have embarrassed the German crown by losing wars to an inferior populace. And that is how he was actually replaced. A butcher, a man who was known for being a ruthless killer because he has taken part in other exercises of quelling rebellions in China and in East Africa. That is how Lothar von Trotha actually came on the scene. He came already, we believe, armed with an extermination order, with an order that he must go to Namibia and really for once and for all deal with the question of Hereros. And that is why on the 11th of August, that same year, the Battle of Amakari, Waterberg, he surrounded our people and there was a clear strategy of killing all of them and should they escape, actually drive them eastward so that they are actually driven across the Kalahari and into British land, then Botswana, as a clear strategy of saying these people should either all be killed or be banished away from their homeland. And so it took about a few months of chasing people who were militarily neutralized. They didn't have any capacity to fire back, but still they were being chased. Their wells, their water wells were being poisoned. They were being barred from drinking water. Those who were found were actually being hanged on trees. Their children, everybody was just being killed. And on the 2nd of October that same year, the village near an eastern town of Namibia, or Shinene, a village called Odombola Windimba, he formalized these practices by issuing the extermination order, what is known as the Ovaherero extermination order, in which we believe in the 20th century, the first time a state policy of exterminating a whole people was actually committed to paper. And this is why historians and all researchers, literally the whole world agrees that through that extermination order and its execution, our genocide by Imperial Germany actually became the first genocide of the 20th century. Of course, our Nama compatriots did witness what was happening to us, and they know that the Germans would next turn to them. So they also rose up around October. And after a campaign of a few months, the Germans also issued an extermination order against the Namas around April 25th, 1905. So that is the history that has then brought the two people together, because already around March or so, concentration camps have been opened up with the collusion of the church, the missionaries, because the policy was really to say, we need to kill all these people. If we cannot kill them, we need to starve them to death. We need to deprive them of access to water. And to the extent that we can capture them, around them, and put them in concentration camps, we need to also, in the meanwhile, extract as much labor from them, because especially the Herero, because of the larger physique, they were seen as useful to the colonial economy. So the idea was to say, let's take them, let's put them in camps, let's take as much out of them in terms of labor, and also slowly kill them. That really was the strategy. But also part of the killing was done through disorientation. People had to be taken to alien, hostile climatic, to areas that are alien to them, where there are hostile climatic conditions. And that's why, for instance, the Hereros, who are largely inhabitants of the central, western, and eastern parts, were taken far deep into the land of the Namas, to Great Namakwa land. Lutherans, actually, of course, that is the town that the Namas themselves call Ngaminos, or something like that. But of course, the Germans introduced it to the world as Lutherans Bay. That's where the Hereros first were taken as prisoners, who were to work on the railway construction, linking the small town of Aus to Lutherans. And so that's how the Shaka Island camp began. On the contrary, the numbers were to be brought to Windhoek because, again, it's the idea of taking people to an area that they don't know very well. So they were mostly brought to the Windhoek concentration camps. And when there were issues there around the German populations around Windhoek, they then also had to be returned to Utrecht. That's how then the Utrecht population, the Shaka Island population grew, and that place actually was turned into a death camp. And this again offers the blueprint for the many death camps of Europe, Auschwitz, and many other places. Again, as the Herero says, nothing perishes into total oblivion. Even though the policy was really to try and kill all of us, people did, some few did survive, some few did limp across the eastern border into neighboring Botswana, and that's where, in neighboring Botswana and South Africa, and that's why we now have their descendants who lives there. Some few would also take up refuge in the mountains, to hide in the mountains of Erongo and elsewhere. And it is out of these survivors that an iconic leader of our people would actually emerge out of these ashes. Jose Akutako actually came out of that, and he would be the man who would once again mobilize our people first to seek statehood, have an identity as a people that would say we now have a state of our own, but later on set us on the agenda that we are now on, which is to seek restitution and restoration for the wrongs that were meted out against us. Of course, again, I've spoken to this. So in a nutshell, really, that is a war that for the Hereros, from about 80,000 strong, we were disseminated to about 15,000 only. For the Namas, from 20,000, only 10,000 survived. So that is the toll that genocidal campaign took on our communities. And that is why today, when we say it is not history for us, it is still the present. And it is still our future, unless what is owed to us is really delivered. And in fact, also linked to that is not only lives that were lost, the land that was lost, about 50,000 square miles, largely all of it continues to be in the hands of the grandchildren of those who stole it from our ancestors. So our inheritance was stolen, it is still not returned. And so it is that background that I want us to have when we talk about our position on the agreement that is being hatched between the two governments in secret, without our participation, without our sanction and input, yet an agreement that talks to a struggle that we have waged almost single-handedly on our own, without a nickel from the Namibian government that today professes to be the one that must speak for us and that excludes us from a process which is about our struggle and about the justice that must be defined by ourselves. And of course, we know why, for instance, in the post-independence Namibia, this issue have not enjoyed much attention, is because it is somewhat disruptive to the narrative that the Namibian state wants to push, or that it peddles, which is that SWAPO, the governing majority, is the one that has paid the ultimate price, is the only one that has championed the liberation of Namibia, and it is also the only one that has paid the ultimate price. That is the narrative that is pushed by SWAPO. And so obviously they see this, this history, if it's amplified, as being disruptive to that narrative. Of course, we know that the Germans on their side would rather have this pushed somewhere under the carpet. And if it's talked about, then maybe it should be talked about to somebody who's not really very invested in it, like the government, because it is a government that is largely led by people who do not share this history, who do not feel the legacy of it, and therefore who take whatever is put on the table as part of expansion of the development aid package for them. But of course, even though that has been sort of the culture to try and not deal with this issue head on, our people have pushed, especially beginning in the 1990s. We have been very vocal on it. We have filed lawsuits in the United States of America and elsewhere. And of course, some of these lawsuits did not go very far in terms of the litigation, but in terms of raising the profile of the issue, we feel that they have given us traction and they have really gotten many people to talk about the issue. And that we believe is also why the Germans came to the table, actually. Also through our own efforts and negotiations at home, we were around in 2006, we were able to successfully push through Parliament a motion that adopted basically 3 demands. The first being that what Germany has done at the turn of the last century to overhead a number of people, of course, because of compromises and largely the position of SWAPO, that to say the least, has been one of reluctance. Because of that, the overhead numbers are not mentioned in the motion, but we know that when you talk of the communities there, you mean us. So, but really the first demand was to say what has transpired at the turn of the last century is actually an act of genocide. So that is the first demand. The second demand, knowing what the law says, when you have committed a genocide, you need to pay reparation. So that is also the second demand there. And then the third one is one of apology. And then there is an explicit demand that communities that were targeted must actually be involved themselves in the talks to present their case. Of course, it's facilitated by the Namibian government as an interested party, because it is the government of the territory or the state that inherited where these crimes actually took place. So those were the 3 demands, and it is those 3 demands actually that gave birth to the talks that went on for about 7 years. But of course, initially the Germans were they were reluctant to talk, and eventually, because of the pressure that we brought to bear, they decided to talk, but only that they decided that they will not be talking to us. So again, as people, we were told that we must join the talks as attachés, as advisors, as technical advisors. Of course, we have refused that because we feel that the mandate to speak on this issue rests with us and us alone. Because we all know that in a democratic dispensation, governments or the sovereignty, the right to represent yourself, always sit with the people, and it is only seated in instances where it is sought for through a clear political program, and only when you give it, then you can say, fine, these people have the right to speak for us. The governing SWAPO majority has never asked for a mandate to speak on this issue from us as a higher number of people, and therefore we feel that they do not have that mandate to speak for us, and that's why we have demanded always that we must be the one to speak for ourselves. So, of course, this is a process that has excluded us. So we have rejected the joint declaration for a number of reasons. One is that the process that delivered it is not right. It did not involve us. But secondly, is that its content is inadequate. The content does not speak to the issues. Number one, the content, of course, one of the demands is that Germany must admit guilt to the crime of genocide. We all know that Germany refuses to do that. And it uses a racist argument that when it was killing our people, we as a people had not reached the requisite level of civilization or civility we were savages. Basically, this is what it says in its court papers. We were not protected by the laws at the time. And so it is only now, if you look at those acts from today's perspective, that is the language that Germany uses. So you can then say it might, or it is a crime of genocide. But at the time of Germany doing it, it was not a genocide. So this is the argument that is peddled there. So Germany, under the first demand, refuses to admit guilt, and therefore that is why there are talks in the joint declaration about project financing, reconstruction, and other things that have nothing to do with reparations, because Germany refuses. Naturally, the second demand also follows that if you don't admit guilt to the crime, you also don't pay the penalty for that crime. So that's why, again, Germany is not paying reparations. The whole joint declaration is about development aid, because it's about what Germany wants to give. It's not about law. It becomes a question of politics and morality, and Germany apparently wanting to heal wounds and many other things that really have nothing to do with us. And that is why, again, we reject that as something that is really a discussion between two governments that has nothing to do with us. Because again, in terms of course, apology is the only thing apparently that is secured by that process. Apology is the only thing that is secured by that process, because words are empty. People can just give apologies, and I think that is also what was done in Tanzania. We are yet to hear from our Tanzanian colleagues what material advantage they have gotten from the words of apology that we heard the president offer that side. Yeah. So, and again, in terms of issues of content, yeah, those were the issues. So basically, we are saying the joint declaration falls very short on many fundamentals of the comprehensive reparation package, because in a comprehensive reparation package, there are issues of restitution. It doesn't really outline clearly who, what, and when will be returned. We are talking about the many things that are here in Mannheim, who will return it when. That is not there. The restoration of people's rights. People are living in foreign lands. Where is their repatriation rights? There is restitution of the land that was lost. We are not really hearing anything about that. So all of these are key issues to us. And that's why I say Bonnie is moving closer to me. So maybe I would leave some of the issues for later. Yeah, but really there is a lot that we need to talk about in terms of restitution, in terms of rehabilitation. People that has been subjected to intergenerational trauma, because we were subjected to so much brutalities and violence. There is no particular around rehabilitation, the need to ensure that there are guarantees of non-reoccurrence. These are all dimensions of the preparation that are absent. So I think I'll leave the rest for our interaction later on. Thank you for the opportunity.
So, meine Kollegin hat mich daran erinnert, dass ich jetzt versäumt habe, meinen Namen zu sagen. Ich heiße Boniface Mabanza. Ich arbeite als Referent bei der Kirchlichen Arbeitsstelle Südliches Afrika in der Werkstatt Ökonomie Heidelberg. Aber ich habe die Veranstaltung nicht vorbereitet. Die meisten Leute, die an der Vorbereitung direkt beteiligt waren, sitzen da, die am Ende vorstellen. Jetzt wollen wir das mitnehmen und aufgreifen, was Nandi gesagt hat. Er hat vor allem über eine Geschichte von Gewalt, von Zwangsmigration, aber auch von Migration von hier nach da. Das ist auch wichtig, wenn wir über solche Themen sprechen. Siedlerkolonien wären nicht möglich gewesen ohne Migration. Heute, wenn wir über Migration im Kontext von Westeuropa sprechen, wecken wir den Eindruck, dass das ein neues Phänomen ist, was nur woanders bekannt ist, nicht hier. Der nächste Beitrag von Paramount Chief versucht, die Verbindung zwischen dieser Geschichte und Gegenwart herzustellen, indem er auch auf das eingeht, was Menschen heute in Namibia versuchen, um zu leben und zu überleben, Menschen in den Gebieten, die unter seiner Verantwortung stehen. Und das, was er an Vision, an Plänen entwickelt hatte, um sowohl in Namibia dafür Menschen zusammenzubringen, als auch Partner, Partnerinnen im Ausland sind, dazu zu bringen, Teil dieses Heilungsprozesses zu werden. Auch darauf würde er eingehen und jetzt mit großer Freude, aber auch mit Ehre möchte ich das Wort an den Paramount Chief übergeben.
Let me take the opportunity to greet everybody seated. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this presentation and the audience that are about to listen to my presentation. I hear from Nandi, the mayor has expressed willingness to rename some streets to our struggle stalwarts, or in honor of the liberation struggle or the genocide struggle that was waged here in Namibia. Here, I must take note that here in Namibia, there's a whole farm near Tsumeb that is named after Mannheim. It's a big farm, normally farms around 3,000 to 5,000 hectares. So it could be a good opportunity that in exchange of that, one of the suburbs is named after some of our fallen heroes. Now, the topic that I was given to talk about is navigating the presence from genocidal legacy, banishment and exile, dispossession and displacement, to a future anchored on smart and strategic partnerships and collaborations. In presenting that topic, here is an outline to guide you in following the presentation. The presence, which is the now, in the context of genocidal legacy, covers the following four things: the case of being a minority as the genocided communities, the struggle of our people in banishment, in exile, those that are in Botswana, South Africa, and elsewhere, the dispossession and displacement of Hereros and Namas here in Namibia, the destruction of our Herero governance system, since I was asked to focus on the issues pertaining to the Bahero in particular. I shall then give you a summary of the challenges emanating from the genocidal history. Nandi has covered a few of that. I shall expound on that. Thereafter, I shall navigate into the future, anchored on smart and strategic partnerships and collaborations. I will then look at the 5 pillars of the strategic plan of the Bahero Traditional Authority. Now, the presence in a context of genocidal legacy is mainly defined by the 2 extermination orders, the Vernichtungsbevel, issued for the Bahereros on the 2nd of October 1904, and for the Nama people on 23rd April 1905. This extermination orders has resulted in the Bahero population, which was 80,000, of which then 85,000 was killed, therefore about 15,000 remaining. The Nama people were 20,000 at the time, and 10,000 was killed. Now, Currently, we are a minority in Namibia of about the Hereros of about 250,000, representing 7% of Namibia's population of about 2.4 million. Our population would have been about 1.26, let's say about 1.3 million at the time, currently. Now you can see that a whole million people in today's numbers are no longer there, are exterminated or reduced. Now, being a minority, this is what we suffer, being a minority in a country. Here is two examples, and the examples are multiple. I'll give you two examples. On your left hand, you see it's an advert in the newspaper, in the local newspapers last year, showing the number of persons that are being welcomed in the the Center for Public Procurement Board of Namibia. Here are 14 staff members being welcomed as new staff members, all the 14 belonging to one tribe in a country with about 15 groups. As recent as this year, you see the other graph I have there, or the picture, showing 13 scholarships of students going to Chevening University in this current admission, receiving scholarship from the British High Commission in Windhoek, all the 13 belonging to one tribe, the ruling tribe. So this skewed distribution of resources and access to resources, whether it is employment or positions in various private sector, not private, the public sector or parastatals or scholarship, has been going on for years. And these are the latest I've just shown you there. Now, now we are a minority, and you see the consequences of being a minority. Here I will present to you the effect of banishment and Hereros pushed into exile by the extermination orders. Von Trotter was very clear, saying all Hereros found in German Southwest Africa or Southwest Africa will be shot. They must leave the German territory. Now, the result of that is that we have Hereros distributed in Angola, Namibia, Botswana in the center, and South Africa at the south, down south. Most Hereros, 250,000, are in Namibia. The rest are a minority. The impact of colonialism in terms of cultural genocide is severe among the Hereros in South Africa, as they do not speak the language, they do not even know the culture. They are not even as such recorded as Hereros, and they are, in the national census, they are classified as others. So these are people without a culture, people who basically do not exist in the face of the nationals in the country, and they basically just live in the shadows of others, therefore suffering huge loss of dignity and self-identity and so forth. These are a group of people that particularly would need attention for real learning the language and relearning the culture. The people in Angola, to some extent, the same, but the Hereros are not only distributed in these 4 countries in Southern Africa. There is a huge population of Hereros in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and a few in Germany and so on. the third or so point of the presence in which we live as a result of the colonial legacy is the dispossession and displacement within Namibia. If you take a very recent example, when Hereros are demanding ancestral land, these are Hereros, Namas, and the San people and Damaras and so on, we have lost land. 2018 government at the second National Land Conference issued a statement and saying ancestral land question will not be entertained. So those who are running government in Namibia today do not recognize the loss of ancestral land from those who have lost it. Now, at the turn of the 20th century, with the German government of the time, the Imperial German government, issued two expropriation proclamations. One was in December 1906, and another one is in 1907. This proclamation was to take all Herero lands, all Herero livestock were then confiscated and placed under the German government or under the German settlers. That means all means of livelihoods were expropriated, and abject poverty becomes institutionalized within your Hereros and Namas. Come independence in 1990, as a result of the 1982 principles that defined how Namibia should get its independence, the ruling party agreed to the 1982 principles, which protects the property rights or properties of those who have properties, which actually means those who were dispossessed were further entrenched in their dispossession, and intergenerational poverty was then sustained to date. Nandi mentioned that in 1863, all of Herero heads of clans. Now Hereros have maybe 250 or more than that, 500 clans. But all those heads of clans converged in Chimbingwe, small town, maybe the capital city at the time, and then they established the Herero central governance structure. That structure had the paramount chief at the time was the Maharero, the father of Samuel Maharero. He was then the paramount chief and commander-in-chief. So that means the paramount chief of all of Hereros and the commander of the wars of the Herero nation against other either invading forces or intruding forces. Under him, there would be then the regional chiefs representing the authorities in governance at the various districts or provinces within the country. And all those regional chiefs then be the representatives of the different regions of the Hereros. Now, these systems was completely destroyed through most Hereros being displaced. Samuel Maharero at the time ended up in Botswana, and many chiefs either died or they were moved. Some went to South Africa, some went to Angola. And over the years, South African colonialism took over. And really, the Hereros never had sufficient time to re-establish the governance system, although they have kept the structure, but not the systems that governing the structure. So we had the paramount chief and several chiefs around, but the mechanisms of governance have disappeared over the years. Now, I give you a summary of the challenges that are emanating from the colonial genocidal legacy. The loss of language or cultural genocide is a key loss, especially among our people in South Africa. I was in South Africa with my chiefs around September this year. And it was heartening to see people, the only Herero they know is singing hymns that they have kept as a form of identity for the past 119 years. No culture, no language can they hear or understand that is Herero. That is a huge loss for people who want to find themselves, people that are living in the shadows of others and not recognized as a community with a particular identity. Now, a second key loss is the persistent abject intergenerational poverty. This poverty is mainly driven by land dispossession. We are displaced within Namibia, where our ancestral land is. We are pushed into the Kalaharis and the periphery of fertile agricultural land. And the people are trying to make a life there. And with the presence or increasing impact of climate change, it becomes much more difficult to make a living. So that process of abject poverty is continuing. And given that those who run the Namibian government to date did not suffer any land dispossession, and therefore they say there is no question of ancestral land should be addressed, no restitution, no compensation should take place. It is further, it is almost like our current government with the German imperial government in collusion to persist the negative impacts of a genocide. Now, being a political minority I've referred to, that is one of the key challenges. Thus, we have no political influence and have limited access to decision-making in terms of how the national cake is distributed or allocated in regions. Dispossession and displacement from ancestral land and weakened community self-governance. These are the key, in my opinion, that I've quickly summarized as the cornerstones of the challenges emanating from the colonial injustice or colonial genocidal legacy. Now, given that legacy, the question that was put to me is to show how the Herero Traditional Authority is trying to navigate into a future anchored on smart and strategic partnerships and collaborations with stakeholders, with interested parties, with people that we're engaging on a day-to-day and more so the German public or the German state. At first, the question that I'll put to the audience, or that the audience should realize, is why is the strategic partnerships or smart partnerships and collaboration important? Why are these things important? We think it is important because this dire situation in which we are is a result of Germany's colonial crimes. We are in this situation, we here are the Hereros and Namas. We are largely in this situation because of the colonial genocidal history of the imperial German Government. Secondly, because the descendants of German colonizers, the descendants of Schutztruppe, are still occupying our ancestral land. They are continuing to benefiting from from the loot, from the dispossession, from the crime of genocide, while we are continuing to suffer from that crime of genocide to this date. The third thing or point why these partnerships and collaborations are important is because more so between us and the German people is because we basically have a common future. We have a common future that is intertwined, as both of our children will have to live together in peace. If we're not partnering and working and seeking strategies to at a community level, at individual level, if we are not working to make the future amicable to both of us, then our two generations would not have peace. The fourth point, there is value in building friendly person-to-person relationship. So we have to build those relationships. I must mention here that last December, it's now a year, last December I took up a German teenager, a boy, a 19-year-old boy from Munich, who had stayed with me for 7 months from December to June this year, December last year to June this year, being at the village, going around with where I go to the Herero issues, to various commemorations, for him to start learning what the Hereros have gone through, learning how we farming, how we make a living in the areas where we are. So for him now, going back home with that vast cultural experience that he gained, he would grow up as somebody who understands us better. And my children will grow up knowing that they can actually form person-to-person relationship, even with children of descendants of those who have killed and deprived or dispossessed and displaced and banished our people. That smart strategic partnerships and collaboration are critical for a common future for these two nations. Now, in navigating the future, as I said, given that background, the Ovario Trading Authority, OTA, is guided by its 5 strategic plan, of which the 5 pillars form the foundations of the OTA strategic programs. So we have a 5-year strategic plan. It stands on 5 pillars that are the strategic programs guiding the authority and its people in moving forward over the next 5 years, or now maybe 4 years left. And to make matters simple, these pillars are represented by the fingers of the right hand. The fingers of the right hand. Pillar 1 is the thumb. It represents governance and institutional capacity. Now, I've said our governance system was destroyed, so we need to rebuild it. We need to bring people within Namibia across the borders at the same level of moving in a direction that will sustain the growth of our people. So as this bold finger represents the solid governance and institutional reform, which is a cornerstone of OTA's sustainability. There is no organization that can survive the future if its institutions are not reformed. The OTA is doing that to ensure that its future is sustainable. We shall create an organization built on the principle of constitutional democracy and the rule of law. We nurture a responsible, transparent, and an accountable leadership at all levels of governance within the organization. This is a process that I've been now Paramount Chief since 2021. So it's a process that we've started in the last 2 years in formalizing some of the structures. But the strategic plans comes from my predecessor way back in 2018. In this year, we have adopted a constitution for the organization, for the Ivahero Training Authority, adopted in July 2023. It is the first ever constitution, ever since 1863. We have been governing the organization on conventions, on what we used to do and what is normally done and so on. But with the constitutional democracy of our country and the statutory law and all that, it requires that we move to formalize our governance systems in a way that it is in line with the national constitution, and where the national constitution and laws are not clear, we need to define that. Our constitution is a legal document because the traditional authorities within Namibia are gazetted and as such declared as the fourth tier level of government. So the constitution and our bylaws would stand a test of any court within the jurisdiction of Namibia. The Constitution makes provision for the establishment of foundations, trusts, and community cooperatives. Significant work is underway to formalize these entities. Some are formalized. These entities will form the basis of our collaboration collaboration and partnership with various individuals, private sectors, governments, and stiftungs across the globe. Therefore, I'm looking forward to individuals, to private sector, to stiftungs, leaders of stiftungs, and so on, to engage us so that we can pave a way forward for either person to person or institution to institution, entity to entity collaboration through smart partnership for mutual benefit. Pillar 2 is indicated by the index finger, represents well-being and education and culture. Now, culture is the foundation of human society. Any society without a culture is doomed. So human societies need to have a culture that defines how they do business, how they engage other societies. No society shall prosper without a good education. Therefore, we value and put a priority on education, including technical education and so on. We promote and encourage our members, our community members, to our communities to enroll in various degree programs or to enroll in schools, primary schools and so on. We have a bias, of course, towards science and technology, engineering, mathematics, and vocational training programs, while at the same time we endeavor to empower our communities with skills in the areas that promote and enhance livelihoods. We do a lot of things. Our communities need to hone their skills so that they can improve either adaptation to climate change or just to changes in economic situation in the country. So OTA is looking for partnering and collaborating in establishing community colleges in technical vocational education. Because I know this is an area that the German private sector and stiftungs have a strong strength in it. But we need to collaborate and work together and invest in a mutually benefiting manner to put in place these institutions, whether it is in South Africa where people are, or in Botswana, or in Namibia, or elsewhere, so that we address the education and the skills development for the new economy, that is a knowledge-based economy. And I know there are also programs of internship where Germany institutions are now taking up possibly persons with skills in vocational training to be part of or be taken into industry for skills upgrading. So these are things that we want to explore, or even exchange some of our professionals, whether it is in the various fields to take joint activities in the various sectors, whether it is private sector or so. Now, the third pillar is your middle finger. It's a pillar of resilience, resilient livelihood and economic advancement. The OTA will facilitate skills training and capacity development in key sectors of the economies where our people are, whether it's livestock production, marketing, and participation in meat value chain, whether it is horticulture or fodder or livestock feed production, whether it is in tourism, ecotourism, community-based tourism, or whether it is municipal waste management programs or adventures, whether it is in off-grid rural electrification using renewable energy. We are blessed in solar energies in this part of the world. With only about 40 days of clouds per year, that means over 320 days of bright sunshine. So many sectors that we need to start to think and use various vehicles of collaboration and partnership. So we're looking for that. You're probably wondering why we're moving in this area also very strongly. We cannot be year to year just campaigning for reparation that will come maybe 50 years or 100 years from now and marginalize the other sectors that define our people. Therefore, the importance of diversifying our energies in what will shape or develop our communities. Now, the fourth pillar, this is a pillar that Nandi is responsible for. Nandi Madengo is my Executive Commissioner for Genocide and Restorative Justice. Basically, we demand, as he said, for reparation, and it's a human right, and it's defined by the UN, various declarations and protocols that support our campaign. Of recent, UN has also published several, at least 2 key ones, I know 3 actually, documents from last 2022 and this year, based on our persistent effort to petition the UN for our cause. Therefore, beginning this year, 7 special rapporteurs of the United Nations wrote to the Federal Republic of Germany, indicating or highlighting the Federal Republic's wrongs, indicating what the Republic should do in ensuring that us as victims of genocide participate directly in the negotiations and that reparations should be paid. As recent as this week, the 8th of December, the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination issued a report to Germany in which it has highlighted again the same issues, the discriminatory practices of the Federal Republic of Germany to sideline the Herero issues and the Nama issues for genocide reparations. So our campaign is ongoing. We shall continue to mobilize the global community. We are particularly very pleased with the work that the German civil society is doing to bring us to Germany, to give us the platform to spread the message for restorative justice, for justice to take place. So this particular occasion is much appreciated and valued for us to be part of your community in distributing our message. Now, pillar 5 is our last pillar, the little finger. In African culture, the little finger represents reconciliation and peace. In all games of children, when they need to reconcile and be at peace, they had to cross the little fingers or shake the little fingers with one another. So here we're looking at networking, collaboration, reconciliation, and peace. So the 5th pillar represents our immense capacity and readiness to form mutually benefiting, smart and strategic partnership and collaborations. Our hands are open and we collaborate with all traditional authorities within Namibia and in South Africa and Botswana and Angola. We work closely where possible with the governments where our people are and the private sector in countries where the Namas and the Hereros are. So that is how we want to extend our network and collaboration. Now, in conclusion, I would say my foot soldier, Nandi Madengo and Angelina Kanduvaritha, are on the ground with you. So please feel free to engage them and leave your contacts with them, or you can email me sometimes for follow-up, because this is just a teaser. And I'm hoping that we'll have a formalized or maybe frequent engagement with the municipality or the city of Mannheim and meet the mayor and the deputy mayor and take the issues of joint partnership collaboration forward. I thank you, and I'm ready for questions if there are. Thank you.
Very much. Vielen Dank. So, jetzt gucke ich ein bisschen in die Gesichter. Ich hatte angekündigt, dass wir die 3 Beiträge auf einen Schlag bekommen und dann steigen wir in die Diskussion. Ich weiß, dass das eine schwere Materie ist. Aber trotzdem möchte ich meine eigene Energie, die ich habe, mobilisieren und zu Ihnen senden, damit Sie sich nochmal mobilisieren. Der letzte Beitrag dauert nur 20 Minuten. Mit dieser Energie schaffen wir das. Und dann machen wir eine kurze Pause und wir steigen dann in die Diskussion. Ist das okay? Meine Energie haben Sie auf jeden Fall.